Liverpool's underworld has always had its monsters, but none cast a shadow quite like Philip 𝐷. Liverpool has had a reputation for being one of the UK's most active centers for organized crime. Its port access, vast drug routes, and history of hardened criminals made it a fertile breeding ground for gangland empires. Among the figures that rose from this underworld, one man emerged with ruthless ambition and iron-fisted control: Philip 𝐷, known to his associates and enemies as Ace Prospect. Welcome to Criminal File. 𝐷 was not just another street thug. He was strategic, cold-blooded, and deeply embedded in the modern infrastructure of British crime. But even the most untouchable kingpins eventually fall. This is the story of the brutal gangland world he built, the violence that kept it running, and the international operation that brought it all crashing down. What 𝐷 never suspected, and what ultimately sealed his fate, was that one of his most trusted lieutenants had flipped. Known on the streets as Digger, this mid-level enforcer had been quietly feeding intel to authorities after being arrested on unrelated weapons charges. In exchange for immunity and protection for his family, Digger turned over access to burner phones, safe house locations, and even the encryption keys 𝐷 believed were untraceable. The irony? 𝐷 once boasted that "no one in my crew talks," but it wasn't just a slip-up. It was betrayal from within that pulled the thread on his empire. The rise of a kingpin Philip 𝐷 didn't start out with a silver spoon in the world of crime. Born and raised in the gritty suburbs of Liverpool, he grew up surrounded by poverty, broken homes, and street-level criminality. But what set 𝐷 apart from the petty criminals around him was his vision. While others fought over scraps, 𝐷 had his eye on the throne. In his 20s, 𝐷 began building connections with well-known organized crime groups across Merseyside. His talent, logistics, violence, and networking. He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, but he was smart enough to let others carry out the dirtiest work. Soon he was orchestrating major drug trafficking operations, moving cocaine, heroin, and cannabis across city and national borders. But drugs were only one part of his expanding empire. If you are still with us, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel. Back to the topic. Guns, encrypted phones, and the business of terror. 𝐷's true power came from his role as a weapons broker. Through connections in mainland Europe, he began importing military-grade firearms, including Glock pistols, AR-15 rifles, and automatic submachine guns. He wasn't just a middleman. 𝐷 managed the supply chain, from sourcing weapons in Eastern Europe to selling them to British gangs. He ensured his clients had firepower that could rival police forces. But what made him untouchable for so long was his use of encrypted messaging apps, particularly EncroChat. Operating under the alias Ace Prospect, 𝐷 was able to coordinate hits, weapons deals, and drug shipments without fear of interception. For years, law enforcement agencies could only speculate about who was pulling the strings behind escalating street wars. 𝐷 was hiding in plain sight, but the final twist? Philip 𝐷 may not have been the true puppet master after all. As investigators dug deeper into the financial web behind his operations, they uncovered an even more elusive figure, an older exiled British national living in Dubai, known only by the alias Silk. Bank transfers, encrypted messages, and asset trails suggested that 𝐷 was the enforcer, the public villain, while Silk quietly pulled the strings from abroad, untouched by gangland warfare. Authorities now believe that 𝐷's capture was just the first crack in a much larger, darker structure, one still operating from the shadows. Acid and blood, a reign of brutality. The true extent of 𝐷's brutality came to light in messages uncovered after EncroChat was compromised by European law enforcement in 2020. In one chilling exchange, 𝐷 plotted to blind a man named Nathan Simpson with acid. The reason? Simpson had supposedly crossed 𝐷's associates. The messages were direct, calculated, and devoid of empathy. He referred to the attack like a business transaction. Sort him proper, mate. Acid to the face. Let him remember who runs this city. This wasn't an isolated incident. 𝐷 frequently collaborated with Jonathan Gordon, a known enforcer who had carried out a horrifying acid attack on Lee Deacon in 2019. Deacon, who suffered life-altering injuries, had been a target in a drug-related feud. 𝐷 also sanctioned beatings, kidnappings, and disappearances. The violence wasn't random, it was systematic. It kept people in line and competitors out of business. Operation Venetic, cracking the code. In 2020, a seismic shift occurred in global policing. Law enforcement agencies in France and the Netherlands infiltrated the EncroChat network, an encrypted communication service used almost exclusively by criminals. They shared this intelligence with the UK's National Crime Agency, NCA, under Operation Venetic, a vast international sting that would become one of the largest ever undertaken against organized crime. Suddenly, thousands of secret messages, photos, and plans were accessible to the police. 𝐷𝐷's alias, Ace Prospect, was soon connected to hundreds of criminal activities. The messages detailed acid attack plots, drug shipments across Europe, firearms inventory lists, hit orders, money laundering operations. It was an open blueprint of a criminal empire, and it would be 𝐷𝐷's undoing. As pressure mounted, 𝐷𝐷 fled the UK. Using fake passports and cash reserves, he moved across Europe, eventually settling in Spain, a popular refuge for British criminals due to its warm climate and lenient extradition policies. But the NCA was watching. With Spanish police assistance, they monitored 𝐷𝐷's movement for months, gathering additional evidence. Finally, in April 2025, he was arrested during a dawn raid in a luxury villa near Marbella. Inside the house, police found 150,000 euros in cash, multiple encrypted phones, a safe with documents tied to international money laundering, a stash of firearms. 𝐷𝐷 did not resist arrest. According to police, he seemed defeated. The fall and the aftermath, 𝐷𝐷 was extradited to the UK, where he faced multiple charges including conspiracy to supply firearms, conspiracy to cause grievous bodily harm, conspiracy to import Class A and B drugs, money laundering. He pleaded guilty after overwhelming evidence was presented, including message logs, transaction histories, and testimonies from former associates. At his sentencing hearing, the judge called him a modern-day crime lord who operated with medieval cruelty. 𝐷𝐷 was sentenced to over 30 years in prison, and more charges may still be filed as investigations continue. But his fall created a power vacuum in Liverpool's underworld. Several rival factions have since moved in, sparking new waves of violence and arrests. Lessons from a criminal empire. The downfall of Philip 𝐷𝐷 is not just a tale of one man's criminal empire collapsing. It is a reflection of how organized crime has evolved with technology and how law enforcement has adapted in response. Encrypted communication, cryptocurrency laundering, and international logistics have transformed gangland operations. But 𝐷𝐷's empire also proves that no matter how far technology advances, arrogance, brutality, and greed still leave trails. Operation Venetic was a wake-up call to criminal syndicates. No one is truly untouchable. For Liverpool, the scars left behind by 𝐷𝐷's reign are still healing, but his capture marks a turning point, a signal that justice can still prevail, even in the darkest corners of the underworld. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.